You would have seen on television those advertisements offering the chance to learn about your ancestry through genetic testing. And like me, you've probably been tempted. I mean, who wouldn't want to find out their backstory and maybe discover if they've got some sort of, exotic history? One of the pioneers of this technology is a company called 23andMe. It started in San Francisco back in 2006, and over the past 20 years, they've collected saliva samples from more than 15 million people whose DNA they've stored on company databases. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 23andMe, the company, are now facing bankruptcy. So to avoid that, they're looking at selling the company, which then raises the question, does the buyer get access to millions of people's DNA? And who is this buyer? And what will they use the information for? The chairperson of 23andMe is trying to assure clients that it's not going to be a problem no matter who buys the company. He released a statement saying, "We are committed to continuing to safeguard customer data and being transparent about the management of user data going forward. And data privacy will be an important consideration in any potential transaction," which doesn't exactly fill you with confidence. It certainly didn't fill the Attorney General of California with confidence. He released a statement urging Californians who've given their DNA to this company to take action. In a statement, he said, "Given 23andMe's reported financial distress, I remind Californians to consider invoking their rights and directing 23andMe to delete their data and destroy any samples of genetic material held by the company." Of course, it may already be too late because in an undercover interview, Nate Johnson, a policy advisor for the US Treasury, said that this company's major shareholders are all pharmaceutical companies who've already had access to people's DNA data. Here he is.
That's when 23andMe comes in, trying to figure out what all you are. I should do that.
You shouldn't do that, though. Do not give your information to them. They sell it to other people.
Do they sell it to Russia?
They sell it to everybody.
Meet Nathaniel Johnson, a policy advisor for the United States Department of the Treasury.
There's a clause in their contract that basically says, we can give your information to our shareholders so that they can do something. And all of their shareholders are pharmaceutical companies. But some of those pharmaceutical companies are companies based in other countries, and those pharmaceutical companies in other countries are the property of the Ministry of Defense of Russia, or owned by China.
So obviously this story raises all kinds of ethical questions. Liz, you ever been tempted to spit into a tube, send it to some company and find out if maybe you're part Spanish or German or...?
Never. And it genuinely boggles my brain that anyone is up for this. There is nothing more private than your personal DNA data. And this company actually, just a few years ago, had a 5-month security breach that met millions of their customers. Nobody knows where the data's even gone, but millions of them had their personal data, almost 7 million customers, had their data just out there flapping around. And that resulted in 23andMe paying out a $30 million settlement. So that quote there from the CEO, just laugh till you can't laugh any harder. It's like, oh, but we're going to keep it secure. Mate, you haven't historically. Anyway, this is a story that should make everyone sit up and take note, because what this means is the fate of millions of Americans' DNA is now subject to a court-supervised sale. I don't know about you, but who's buying it? Who is that interested in your DNA? Indeed, you would notice that bloke there referred to the shareholders of 23andMe. And guess who the top shareholders are? BlackRock and Vanguard, the world's largest investment companies. And if you're sitting at home going, well, I used Ancestry, so that's different. No, that was bought out in 2020 by Blackstone, another very large investment company, was bought for $4.7 billion. Again, the question remains, why are these guys so interested in getting their hands on your DNA data? It's a very, very pertinent question to be asking. Someone's profiting off it, and it's not you. And only a brief look at BlackRock and Vanguard's many entanglements and their clients shows that they have a lot of these pharmaceutical companies. That's what he's referring to there within their paddock. So it stands to reason, where is this DNA now? Has it already been sold off? That is what this report from James O'Keefe is alluding to. So you've got this state supervised sale pending, but the suggestion here is that a lot of it has already been sold off. And if what Johnson said is even remotely true in that clip there, that is DNA being sold to private companies. This is a massive issue of national security type importance. And how, you ask? Well, a man by the name of Jason Crow, he's a member of the House Committee on Armed Services and House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. This was some years ago, but he was raising this issue perhaps quite prophetically. He said, quote, "That's what this is, where you can actually take someone's DNA, their medical profile, and you can target a biological weapon that will kill that person or take them off the battlefield or make them inoperable." The bottom line is, why would anyone just be like, oh yeah, it's just about genealogy, it's just about finding out my family history? I cannot understand how millions of people are that naive.
And that's, I've always said that I wouldn't do it, because who knows where my DNA is going to end up. I mean, 23andMe, until this point, has already done 15 deals with pharmaceutical companies to share the DNA data that they have. GlaxoSmithKline paid $300 million in 2018 to get access to 5 million people's DNA. So they're already profiting off this DNA, which is a sacred thing. It's like your fingerprint, right? It is your unique identifier. Now, in some ways, that identifier isn't totally unique, because we know people have been linked to crimes that they didn't actually commit, because perhaps the coppers had your brother's DNA and all of a sudden they think you've committed a crime, but it was actually someone else. And that's the other thing I've always wondered. Well, what's to stop a government anywhere in the world trying to get hold of this data?
Well, they can.
Whether they do it through the courts or they buy it or whatever. So here I am, and I'm not saying I'm planning to commit any crimes that would require the police to gain access to my DNA. But in 2050, when Comrade General Albo is still running the country and he's finally decided it's my time to go to the gulag and he's going to put me up on some trumped-up charges, and he gets my DNA from Ancestry.com or 23andMe, what am I going to do about it? I mean, why would you voluntarily give that over to anyone else when you don't have to? I get that people want to trace their family trees, etc., but, like, could you make it any easier for you to become a target of private companies or governments or whoever it might be with nefarious intent? It is so dumb.
There's an interesting story back from 2018 where police have been searching for decades for, he was called the Night Stalker or the Golden State Killer, someone who had raped and murdered dozens of women in the 70s and 80s, and they'd been completely unable to find this guy. So police got DNA and they went into GED match and they looked at, they found 20 possible great-great-grandparents. They narrowed it down to 2 suspects and eventually found the person using one of these ancestry websites to track down the killer. So governments can access it.
They do.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's for nefarious purposes.
And they're happy for that to make it into the media, because it's like, oh, look, this is a positive thing. Never mind that we compromise the DNA data of millions of people in order to just be like, hi, excuse me, Ancestry.com, excuse me, 23andMe. Well, we're the government, we're the law enforcers, so it's in safe hands with us. Just hand it over, won't you? That's fine. No, it's not fine. Like I said, nothing is more private than your personal genetic info, and you have no idea how someone can weaponise that.
I tell you who'd want it: insurance companies.
Well, exactly.
I mean, want it.
Well, there's lots of people.
I mean, they track your driving if they get your DNA.
Exactly. And that's the next thing. They'll be refusing you health insurance on the basis of your DNA, because they'll do the genomic testing and they'll work out that you've got a family history of breast cancer or whatever it is, and then they'll start denying you insurance. That's where this is going. That's why this stuff is so valuable. I mean, I worry about giving my bloody ID if I go into a nightclub or a registered club or something.
Oh, you go into nightclubs, do you,
Well, I haven't been to
Caleb?
nightclubs for a while.
ID at a nightclub,
No, I don't get
We've got
asked for
ourselves
ID.
a raver.
But I have been to nightclubs where, in order to get in the door, they scan your ID before you go in. Presumably, you know, if you cause a ruckus or something, it then means they've got your stuff on record. But I'm like, what's the rules here? Are you going to destroy that at any point? Do you just now have my photograph and my address on record forever? And what do you like? Seriously, I worry about that, and some people are willing to hand their DNA over to a private company. I don't get it.